You're very welcome along to the Matchbook Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey. We've no Adrian Clark this week, but delighted to welcome Mark O'Hare. Adrian will be back with us next week. So, Mark, you're flying a solo this week, and like all great teams, normally they have a replacement to come in, but we're going to fight this with 10 men for the next week by the looks of
it. Yeah. Cheers, Adrian. Off sunning himself in sunnier climes. Who takes a holiday in the middle of the season? I don't know. I certainly wouldn't. So hopefully you can count on me in the tough times, Dan. I'll always be here, always available.
That's the spirit, Mark. And listen, we'll fly through this. It'll be a little bit shorter show, but I'll try and push Mark a little bit more than usual if he's one or two takes I don't quite agree with, etc. But a lot of talking points in the weekend. We will lead into some of the games. Frankfurt, Liverpool, Arsenal, Atletico, Villarreal, City, Monaco, Spurs are the four games we're going to cover. Any other bets, long shots, and best bets. A reminder of the offer you can see on the bottom of the screen there. Enter the bonus code POD50. I will reiterate, if you haven't got a Matchbook account, you can take advantage of our exchange pricing, but also our bet builder options as well. And it is our most generous new customer offer. Bet £50 and get £50 worth in free bets. Full T's and C's available on insights.matchbook.com or matchbook.com/promotions. That's POD50. But let's get into it, Mark. And obviously, Frankfurt against Liverpool. I mean, I'm guessing this was a game you were possibly targeting in terms of goals, maybe signing with Frankfurt here. Liverpool, United, bit of a weird game in the sense that could have gone either way at times. I know Bruno had the chance to make it 2-0, but Liverpool had several chances themselves. So how do you go about trying to price that into Wednesday night, which would be a massive game for Liverpool? They don't want to lose 2 out of 3 games.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I said on last week's Premier League show or weekend show that despite the injury issues and despite the sort of warning signs, I thought hosting Man United was the perfect opportunity for Liverpool to sort of almost reignite their season. But wow, kind of the concern has only increased really after the weekend. The sort of controlled winning machine we got used to last year, which kind of walked their way to the title, just seems so many sort of years away now. They look directionless and kind of without a plan at times. And I think now in back-to-back games, they've kind of gambled against Chelsea and United, chucking players forward off the bench to chase games. They've equalised, tried to then go and win it and ended up losing it. So I think that's a massive gamble when your teams just aren't controlling matches or defending well enough to sustain matters, and they don't have that control sort of required to go all-out attack. So yeah, in both games now, I've felt they've looked pretty average at best. And look, they didn't have much luck on Sunday. They hit the woodwork 3 times, but still too many times now they were pretty ponderous, short on ideas, and frustrating their own fans, actually. And 4 straight defeats. They're trying to avoid 5 successive defeats now for the first time since 1953, which is just kind of shows how significant that current run is. 4 straight defeats for the first time since 2014. So, yeah, and to be honest, I wouldn't be backing them at 161 against Frankfurt or most teams at the moment. Obviously, we can't measure the impact of what happened in the summer and the Diego Jota tragedy, but it's very difficult to sort of build that in. But you have to assume there might be some sort of hangover from that in terms of psychological suffering, perhaps. Mo Salah has been way below his standards. And yeah, systematically and I guess individually, things just aren't clicking or working right now. And after 8 league games last season, Liverpool conceded 3 goals, none from set pieces, kept 5 clean sheets. This season, 11 goals, 5 of which have come from set pieces, just 2 clean sheets. And I think in terms of what we saw at the weekend, Cunha and Mbeumo, Mount sort of using their pace to cause problems for Van Dijk and Konate. Van Dijk looked really rattled in that first half, and Kerkez has been struggling all season. So I can absolutely guarantee you that Frankfurt will look to unsettle that back line, whoever plays. They will look at Liverpool, see that they are they're not defending counterattacks very well. They're not defending movement very well. And that's something that Frankfurt have in droves, really, whether it's Doan, Bayoya, Knauf, all have pace, creativity, work rate, who can really expose sort of fragile defensive systems at the minute. And also you've got Can Uzan, who's basically the next jewel in Frankfurt's armory. They continue to sell big players for big money, and he's the next headline grabber, and he's a real rising star. So look, they were humbled and embarrassed at Atletico on match day 2. Absolutely shocking performance in Madrid, and were well beaten by Bayern at home before the international break. But they could and should have scored in that game. And in Frankfurt, they do tend to be quite tough to sort of turn over. So they've won 7 and lost just once in the last 10. home group or league stage European games. And I think facing a Liverpool side that's leaked at least twice now in 7 of 12 games this season and allowed Man United 5 big chances on Sunday, they will expect to score here and possibly score multiple goals, because I think there's a doubt now about Gravenberch as well. After his ankle injury, I'd expect Ekitike to come back into the Liverpool team. Isak was pretty anonymous. Ekitike, obviously, as a former Frankfurt player, will be keen to impress. And I guess that's the Achilles heel for Frankfurt too, is they cannot defend either. 18 goals conceded in 7 Bundesliga games. It's the worst of all teams in the German top flight. So, we've talked about them a few times now on the podcast, but their matches do tend to be incredibly entertaining, goal heavy. And I think that looks like the best approach on Wednesday night, actually. Frankfurt have played now 9 Bundesliga and Champions League games after the weekend's 2-2 draw at Freiburg, all of which have gone over 2.5 goals. 8 of 9 have gone over 3.5. 5 have gone over 4.5. We've had 5.44 goals per game on average, with 8 of those 9 seeing both sides score. And the results are just mental, really. 4-1, 3-1, 1-3, 5-1, 3-4, 6-4, 1-5, 0-3, 2-2. And then, if you look at Liverpool, 7 of 10 league and Champions League games over 2.5 goals, 7 of 10. Both sides have scored. Just 3 have gone over 3.5 goals. But I think Frankfurt's presence in this game is enough to sort of hit that over 3.5 goals market, which is an odds against offering at the minute, 2.06, which was the price that stood out to me most.
Okay, yeah, we'll lock that in. And again, you can back that with our exchange market. So invariably, you're getting the best price to back 4 goals or more in this game, purely goals. I've asked Mark, as I ask Mark and Agent every week, for podcast listeners, and to reward existing customers, we do a £10 money back as a free bet if it loses. So we see a lot of you guys increase numbers every week going over there. So well, we're taking advantage of this offer. Mark, you're going to mix it up a little bit, because we tend to look for something in and around 2.5 to 3.0 ish, and you found a nice double you think you compare.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, we'll be talking about this game a little bit later in the show, but I looked at the favourites who looked the most vulnerable and which prices I would prefer not to take or feel might be a little bit too short this midweek. And Liverpool came out on top on most of those categories, actually. As I say, Frankfurt were diabolically bad in Atletico on match day 2. They just didn't show up. May as well have thrown a few goals in themselves, the way in which they defended. But going forward, there's no doubt that they can cause problems. And I think back in Frankfurt, with a point to prove, there'll be a rousing atmosphere there. I just feel the fans and the players will feel this is a wonderful opportunity for a statement performance against a Liverpool team who are down on their luck right now. They've lost 3 successive away games, including a pummeling at Crystal Palace. And Frankfurt will fancy their chances. So, look, we already fancy goals, so why not combine both teams to score alongside double chance Eintracht Frankfurt? We're getting 2.9 on that bet builder, almost 2-1, which feels a bit chunky.
Okay, yeah, and there'll be another chunky price in that game at the end of the show. If you are listening and it is Wednesday morning, just check out the description. You will see the timestamps there. Arsenal versus Atletico here, Mark. I mean, Arsenal have got off to a good start in the Champions League, a chance to win as many games as possible to get up into the top 8, or at least assure yourself you'd be in and around that, maybe with a game or 2 to go that you can perhaps rotate, maybe not as much as in the previous format. Atletico, we've spoken about them. They're a different side this year. So again, going into this game, you would expect the unders, or at least pro-unders approach. Is that ultimately where you've ended up?
It is, because I just think Arsenal's defence supersedes anything else, really.
Okay. Yeah.
Style, just the way in which they play, it doesn't really lend itself to shootouts, high-scoring games. We saw again on Saturday evening at Fulham, a venue where they've dropped points in previous years, that they managed to get the job done. Quite a lacklustre first half, I felt, but score from a set piece and close the game out. And they're just brutally efficient when they get ahead. A little bit tough to watch as a neutral sometimes, possibly too, from an Arsenal supporter's perspective when they're not winning. But you look at the weekend game against Fulham. Once they got ahead, Fulham managed just 1 shot when chasing the game after falling behind, which is quite impressive. And it's the second successive Premier League game Arsenal have failed to concede a single shot on target, which is quite remarkable. Just 65 shots now faced in 8 league matches this season, an XG level below 5.0, just 3 goals conceded now in 10 league and Champions League games. And understandably, there's been similarities being drawn between themselves this season and the Chelsea team that broke all those sort of defensive records and data back in 2004, I think it was. But yeah, we didn't.
4 or 5.
Yeah, that time. Yeah. So we didn't necessarily see it against Fulham, but obviously the 8 summer signings, I think, have added more quality in reserve. Eze starting now instead of Ødegaard, Moreno and Martinelli are options. It didn't necessarily show how good they can be in possession, but they're often being labelled this set-piece FC. But there is a much more sort of menacing aspect to Arsenal, and I think they've been more willing and capable of counter-attacking this season than perhaps previous years. I think that's drawn out in the data as well. Whether they'll get those chances in midweek against Atletico, we'll have to wait and see, because as you say, previous Atletico sides have been pretty watertight. This season's team isn't quite so. They're much more fluent, much more forward-thinking. They have scored in all 11 competitive games they've played this season. But I'm just not sure they'll go to the Emirates and with the intent to attack and play on the front foot. If we saw their game against Liverpool or match day 1, despite the 3-2 score, they were distinctly second best in the first half. And even in the second period, when chasing, they only managed 6 shots, and the big chance count read 7-1 in Liverpool's favour that night. Liverpool went off as 1.5 favourites. Obviously, Atletico were at a lower ebb going into that match than they are this midweek. But since then, we've also seen Liverpool sort of drop down a few pegs based on our own expectations from that match day 1 game too. And so to see Arsenal at 164, I thought seemed all right and a reasonable base to work from. So yeah, if you do chuck in under 4.5 goals, we're getting 192. So that's 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 2-1 or 3-1 gets paid at that price, which I think feels fair enough actually to get Arsenal close to evens. I'd be very surprised if this game goes to sort of 5 goals or more. Arsenal have actually won their last 14 league or group phase home matches in this competition in a row, 11 of which have come alongside clean sheets, or the most recent 11. They beat Real Madrid here without conceding last season. They beat PSG in the league phase 2. Atletico, meanwhile, winless on their travels this term in all comps. They're also winless in 9 group or league phase matches with English teams. If you look at their Champions League away record since March 2022, 4 wins, 2 draws, 9 defeats. The wins: Salzburg, Sparta Prague, Feyenoord and PSG. And in that PSG match last season, they were absolutely bulldozed. Don't know how they managed to pinch the points there. So even if you look at their La Liga record this calendar year, 3 wins in 14. They scored fewer than 2 goals on 11 occasions, 3 away clean sheets in that 14-game sample. So they do have a decent record of getting on the score sheet in the Champions League. But this is the best defence in Europe, and they're facing, and I think it's difficult to see them scoring at least twice in this game. So yeah, even if you account for Atleti getting on the score sheet, I still think Arsenal probably have enough nous to get the job done close to even money. So Arsenal and under 4.5 goals, 192.
Okay, good case there on that game. We'll move on to Villarreal versus Manchester City. Watch the City game on the weekend, Mark. It feels if you shut down Erling Haaland, you can get a result against the City team. That's a big if, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's... the numbers are extraordinary, aren't they?
Sorry, I wanted to get to say he is an absolute joke, and that was as good a Erling Haaland performance as I've seen. As in, nothing was happening in the game, and he managed to get his 2 chances on target when they mattered. And look, they went in via deflection. Keeper maybe should have saved. It doesn't matter. He got the goals, and that's doing it for them at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I think he's scoring every 62 minutes in the Premier League, 23 goals and 13 for club and country. Just extraordinary, really. He's only failed to score once for Man City this season. Yeah, quite extraordinary. You're right. He was pretty much anonymous for most of that match, and then just pops up with 2 goals in sort of 10 minutes and wins the game for City, who were sort of dismissed in the title race after losing 2 of their first 3 games in the Premier League. But it kind of caught me by surprise at the weekend when they were leading the Premier League before Arsenal played. They're still second in the Premier League now, and they should be credited for that sort of turnaround, even if the schedule hasn't been overly hard. I know they did get a deserved point at Arsenal in that sequence, but Arsenal's team selection that day probably worked in their favour. But yeah, as you say, with Erling Haaland in the team and the way in which he's scoring at the minute, they don't have to find too much to sort of get results. But they have been much more effective at finding him in the box. Actually, he's looking really, really hungrier than ever to score goals and break records. But he's getting into better positions too. Fewer touches from him outside or in the final third, and much more in the penalty area this season compared to last year. Could have had a hat-trick on Saturday against Everton as well. But I didn't think City had it all their own way, actually. I thought they were fortunate not to go in behind in the first half. And without Rodri and with that unfamiliar back four, I think we saw a few frailties on show. Kuzanov and out, Nori still unavailable. So you've got Nunes and O'Reilly at fullback. Ake made his first league start since February, struggled a little bit. So Gvardiol should come back in here at least. And they did have Marmoush, Shirky and Kovacic off the bench too. So the squad is getting stronger, unbeaten in 8 games across all comps. Very worthy favourites, I think, in Spain, but I'm not really rushing to back them below 1.8. They failed to win at Monaco at 135, albeit with a stoppage time penalty. I did a little bit of odds analysis on Man City away in the Champions League before the show. I just noticed since the start of 21-22, all of City's away wins in this competition came at odds of 1.7 or below. Now, during that same 23-game sequence, they have failed to win at odds of 1.35, which was the Monaco match, 195, 201, 201, 174, 113, 198, 183, and 177 in this competition. And in fact, they've won at odds of 178 or larger just once away from home, going back to the beginning of 2021 in the Champions League. And only once since 2017 have they won by a 2-goal margin or more when odds of 1.5 or bigger away from home in the Champions League, which is quite something, really. And I think with Rodri missing still, the stat about them losing, 8 of 111 games in the Premier League with him starting compared to 14 of 49 without him. I'm prepared to oppose them at these prices. So rather than back City at sub 1.8, I'm going to support Villarreal with a +1 start at 174. Minimal price difference there, but we get the home win, the draw on side, and we get our stake back if City win by exactly 1 goal, only losing if City win by 2 or more. I think Villarreal can be a tough opponent. They've only lost once in the last 10 home Champions League games. Have only lost 5 of the last 40 home games in La Liga or Europe, often giving the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona some really tough assignments here too. They are a little bit depleted at centre-back coming into this match, but it's true too, they weren't that great against Betis at the weekend or when hosting Juve on match day 2. But I think that's already reflected in the market and the line and price that we're getting here. So, I think they can be competitive. And I would be slightly surprised if they did lose this match by a 2-goal margin or more. So, happy to give them a shot here with Villarreal +1 at 174.
Okay, interesting angle, even looking perhaps more so at the historic price and City away from home rather than maybe what's going on with City at the moment. So bit of both there. Villarreal +1.0 on the Asian handicap. If you haven't bet Asian handicap before, there's a great YouTube video, a couple of minutes on our YouTube channel that explains how to bet on Matchbook in that market. Monaco versus Spurs. Mark, I have to say, Spurs, I heard a few people saying, Spurs and the numbers weren't quite adding up for them. They take the lead against Aston Villa, so they had every chance to prove those doubters wrong. And I thought it was a really poor performance from then on, particularly when they went 2-1 down against Villa. I never saw them have sustained pressure in the Villa half. And if anything, Villa probably could have got a third on the counter-attack. So overall, been disappointed with Spurs maybe in the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, I definitely have. I think Adrian has too. We both opposed Spurs at the weekend. It was one of those where you sort of take the win, but I was mindful too that Tottenham probably didn't deserve to lose it either based on the balance of play. I felt conceding 2 goals from outside the box. Even so, I guess similar issues continue to trouble them at the minute. The midfield pairing of Bentancur and Palhinha wasn't the most inspiring for a side at home, looking to play on the front foot. Xavi Simons, who was barely involved. He could and should be Spurs' most creative force right now, and he didn't have a touch in the Villa box, failed to have a shot or a single dribble in the game. And I don't want to hark on about it on and on and on, but Spurs just struggling to create anything of note from open play. 6 shots in the box against Villa, 0.77 XG overall. But ultimately, the key stat for me here is the 0.16 expected goals generated from open play, which is absolutely abysmal. And it means their last 8 matches across Europe and the Premier League have now averaged 0.56 XG from open play. And this is a team who have significantly overperformed in both boxes in Premier League action this year and been pretty bang average in both Champions League matches. Very fortunate not to lose away in Bodo on match day 2. They lost Christian Romero in the warm-up on Sunday. If he's absent, that's a big blow. He's a very good ball player. Danso is a decent defender, but I think he's better in a 3 than a 2. Doesn't offer the same ability in possession, so there are concerns there. I think Spurs probably did have the better chances. Villa's winner was only their second shot on target and came, I thought it looked like a bit against the run of play, but Spurs could still have levelled still. But it's just not a team I think worth trusting at short enough prices. And look, they're not massively short here, 244 at Monaco, and they are relatively fair favourites too. There is, I think, a class gap between Ligue 1 sides outside of PSG in the Premier League. But then we saw Man City find this assignment quite tricky on match day 2. Eric Dyer scoring a stoppage time penalty to to pinch a point for Monaco, who was definitely second best that night, but they weren't completely overawed either. And they've since sacked Adi Hutter. They've employed Sebastian Pognaccoli from Union Saint-Gilloise as their new boss during the international break. Dyer is injured. They've switched systems as well. Pognaccoli prefers a 3-4-3, so he's missing quite a few defenders at the minute, but he still went with 3-4-3 at the weekend when they went away to Angers. So there's still a few question marks to me about Monaco, but they are a tricky team. I think this is something Adrian referenced ahead of that Man City match, but the Stade Louis II, it's a venue which is quite unique. It's a stadium, a pitch operating above a car park, and the atmosphere is often pretty lacking and sparse. It's a strange experience, I think, for top teams. And I think it's telling that since March 2024, only PSG, Benfica and Angers have beaten Monaco there. So Man City, Villa, Barcelona, Marseille, they've all failed to win here. So I did look long and hard at Monaco double chance here alongside something else. But without Eric Dyer and with that formation and system change, I think I can leave the match outcome alone here. I mentioned that Angers game at the weekend. Monaco allowed 10 shots in the box, 1.77 expected goals against a team who really struggles to create. So instead, I think I'd be more at home backing both teams to score and under 4.5 goals, which is 2.05 odds against, which is a bit more appealing. Spurs have scored in 17 of the last 18 European games. They were involved in that eventful match against Bodo on match day 2, and Monaco's home matches this season 2-2, 2-2, 5-2, 3-2 and 3-1. So they're conceding goals despite scoring as well. Spurs' last 5 have seen both teams to score in the Premier League and Champions League. They've also scored at least twice in all 5 of their away games under Thomas Frank too. And I think there is that theory now that they could be better suited to playing on the road as well. So I think BTTS and under 4.5 goals, that covers the 1-1, 2-1, 3-1. Either way, and the 2-2, of course, and we're getting an odds against price. So, yeah, quite happy to sort of leave both teams alone and just support goals.
Okay, you can lock that into the matchbook bet builder. Monaco versus Spurs, both teams to score and under 4.5 goals. We'll move on to any other bets, Mark. Now, you are notoriously not a fan of this format, but I don't think any other Champions League format will give you Kairat versus Pavos with a chance of 3 points in the Champions League. It's amazing. Kazakhstan versus Greece, or Cyprus, apologies. It's a brilliant occasion. Even you, the harshest critic, will admit that.
Oh, 100%. And that's one of the big positives about this new format is we do get a variety of games, and we do get the opportunity to see not just pot 1 v pot 1, but pot 4 versus pot 4. That's much more up my street, in all honesty. I'm the kind of freak who's watching Belarus versus Liechtenstein during the international break instead of France versus Spain. But this is quite a massive match, a huge occasion for both teams. 2 of the major minnows in this season's competition. No Champions League or league or group phase experience between them. They've only collected 1 point from their first 2 matches between them. Both were given real pastings on match day 2, but this is the kind of match where both clubs will be targeting. As I say, pot 4 versus pot 4, a huge opportunity to get points on the board. Kairat aiming to be the first Kazakh team to win in the Champions League proper. Paphos hoping to be the first Cypriot team to win since 2011 in the Champions League proper. So there is a lot riding on this, and therefore I think we can look towards possibly an open, attacking, entertaining and card-heavy game because of so much at stake here. So over 4.5 cards is heavily favoured. It's 173. But we can get it to 186 by just including a goal. And as I say, both sides should be looking to win this game. I don't expect a defensive first approach. This is not like a Champions League qualifier, or at least it really shouldn't be. Paphos have actually scored in 14 of the last 16 European games. Kairat scored away at Sporting on match day 1. So happy to assume that we'll get at least 1 goal here and put most of the focus on the cards because Chris Kavanagh of Premier League fame is covering it. He gave 6 cards at the weekend in Forest versus Chelsea. He gave 3 during Inter's 3-0 winning at Slavia Prague in this competition already. But 4 of his last 5 in the Premier League have brought at least 4 cards. Last season, he did 1 Champions League game, produced 6, and his Europa League matches saw 8, 4, 5, and 8. So this will only be his 3rd Champions League group or league phase game. And he's done 8 Europa matches in total, excluding qualifiers. And he's given 4+ in each of those, 5+ in 6 of those 8. We've got a Kairat side here who have been booked at least twice in both of their first 2 matches and in 8 of the last 10 Champions League games, 8 of which were qualifiers. And Paphos picked up 4 in their opener at Olympiacos, just 1 in defeat versus Bayern, but that was a a complete thrashing. But the last 13 away European games, this is Paphos, they've averaged 3.23 cards, and the match average is 6.15. So hoping to get 5 on the board here. Should go close in Kazakhstan, and hopefully we'll get a goal or 2 as well. So over 4.5 cards and over 0.5 goals pays 1.86.
Yeah, I was watching some international match. I'm actually trying to find on Google. Chris Kavanagh was reffing, and you sort of perk up in your chair going, "Oh, there's a Premier League referee." I don't know why we have such ownership of those referees. I guess we watch them all the time and seeing them outside their comfort zone, I guess, for want of a better description. But we'll lock that in, and it is a great occasion. 32nd versus 36th in the Champions League. So that's the way we roll here on Matchbook. We have another any other bets, Mark, but it's going to combine into your best bet double. So I want you to start with your long shot, and then I'll come back on the Galatasaray section. But Frankfurt to win. If you had to have one long shot, you've touched on this at the start, and take on one fab, it's going to be Liverpool.
I think so. Yeah, as I said earlier in the show, I looked at the favourites who looked the most vulnerable at the prices, and yeah, I wouldn't be backing Liverpool. I wouldn't be putting them in my accumulators at 162 away at Frankfurt. And I know it's easy to look at what Frankfurt did at Atletico and also the roasting they took against Bayern Munich, but they are capable. They are very, very capable on their day. And when they turn up and bring the noise, which they really should do on Wednesday night, will be a really good atmosphere. We saw Liverpool underperform in an intense atmosphere in Galatasaray. I expected much more from them on that occasion, and they failed to deliver. And since then, they've obviously lost 3 successive away games, 4 games on the spin, took a real pummeling at Crystal Palace. And but if you look at their record now, I know the title was sewn up early doors last season, but it's 6 defeats in 9 away League or Champions League games since March. They've only won in that time at Leicester, Burnley, and that smash and grab at Newcastle as well. So Frankfurt at 5.5 looks a big enough price to cheer on here. Their defence is obviously an issue, but we saw Liverpool blank at Galatasaray. Didn't look like scoring much or many or look hugely inspiring in that match, or at Burnley, or at Crystal Palace, or at Chelsea, or at Newcastle, or at the weekend against Man United either. So it's not beyond them to blank or fail to fire in the forward areas this season. So you can be really, really bold and back the 8.2 on Frankfurt to win and both teams to score. But because of those recent Liverpool performances in the final third, key players misfiring or sort of yet to find their place in the side, I don't think there's any point in trying to sort of add something a bit too much here. We can just back Frankfurt on the nose at a nice price, a long shot price of 5.5. So yeah, I'm going to back Frankfurt to win as my long shot.
Okay, interesting team selection, I would say, for Liverpool this Wednesday. So fascinating to see what Arne Slot does. Their best bet time, Mark. This is an any other bets, but then lead into your best bet, which is the over 2.5 double. So Galatasaray versus Bodo, you're expecting goals, and you're going to combine it in a double then as well.
Yeah, the double is that game. Eintracht Frankfurt versus Liverpool. Overs have hit in all 9 Frankfurt games this season. 8 of those going over 3.5. 8 of those seeing both sides score. Liverpool over in 7 of 10. League and Champions League, 7 of 10 seeing both sides score as well. So be very surprised if that game fails to deliver goals. But yeah, combining it with Galatasaray with Bodo, Gala bounced back from their thrashing on match day 1 against Frankfurt to beat Liverpool in Istanbul. A very different performance to the usual Galatasaray approach, but I suspect we'll see something of the old here, a much more adventurous, free-flowing, entertaining, attacking Galatasaray team against a Bodo team who will always bring the noise themselves. So both sides will believe 3 points, I think, is up for grabs here. Both sides tend to be at their best when playing on the front foot, so expecting entertainment. Gala have scored in 22 of the last 23 home European games. Bodo have scored at least twice in 10 of their last 14 league or group phase games. And they come into this match having returned back-to-back 2-2 draws against Slavia Prague at home, away, and Spurs at home. A Spurs game, actually, they really should have won. But to give you an idea of what Bodo, I think most people know what to expect when Bodo Glimt play. But on Saturday, they won 5-2 away at Sarpsborg. That match just reflected what we always kind of expect from Bodo in their approach. 7 goals in total, but there were 44 shots, 39 of which came from inside the penalty box. And the XG in that match came to 7.56. There were no penalties involved either, just an absolutely wild match involving Bodo. But yeah, 9 of their last 14 league or group phase games in Europe have seen over 2.5 goals. And you look at Galatasaray, 17 of the last 24 in Europe have gone over 3.5, including 9 of the last 11 in Istanbul as well. So you can back over 3.5 goals as a single there at 2.1, which we will do. But we'll also combine it with the over 2.5 goals double with Eintracht Frankfurt and Liverpool for 2.02, the double. So expecting goals in both Wednesday games.
Okay, podcast listeners, a lot thrown at you. Insights.matchable.com if you want to recap, or you can look at that page while you listen or watch as well. But my thanks to Mark. Smashed it out in around 30 minutes, which was our targeted time. But we will be back on Thursday to preview the Premier League in similar-ish time, around 30 minutes or so. But thanks a million for listening. Enjoy the Champions League. Should be a good one this week. If having a bet, please do so responsibly. And we will chat to you, as I said, on Thursday. Bye-bye.